What other conference in college football has 14 teams who are still alive in the championship race? I'm Pete Mundo, Heartland College Sports. Welcome in Week 11. The preview show, predictions, picks are all here. Thanks for joining us on Heartland College Sports. We cover the Big 12. We appreciate you, and you know what I'm asking right out of the gates, right? I ask because it makes a difference, and all our content's free. Subscribe if you haven't yet. YouTube, podcast, Spotify, Apple, wherever. Hit that thumbs up. We appreciate you doing that on the video. And same thing on the podcast. Drop that 5-star rating and review. We have an incredible week of Big 12 football, and I cannot wait to get into it right now with you here on the show. So we have what I'm going to start calling Elimination Week around the Big 12. The Big 12 put up a graphic on Thursday showcasing 14 teams who are still in the Big 12 title race with 4 weeks to play. The only 2 teams mathematically eliminated, Arizona and Oklahoma State. Okay, if I told you before the season that there would be 2 teams mathematically eliminated by week 11, would you in a million years have guessed Oklahoma State and Arizona? Oklahoma State, not a shot. Arizona, I had them about 500. A lot of you had them a lot higher because of the star power coming back. But nobody would have ever picked both of those teams in this conference to be the only 2 eliminated by week 11. But here we are. So technically 14 teams are in the mix. Now after this, that number's probably getting slashed in half. But we now have true elimination games in the Big 12 title race this weekend. And we have some outstanding games, some getting more attention than others. But really, every game has some level of importance to it when you actually look at it. So the storylines are rampant across the board. And to me, the biggest storyline in the biggest game is Texas Tech and Colorado. This game is not technically an elimination game. Like, the loser will still probably be mathematically alive. But let's be honest. You look at the Big 12 standings, you know them as well as I do at this point. It looks like we're shaken down to about 4 teams in the mix. Maybe it's 5. We're pushing it at 6, right? We've got BYU at the top. We've got Iowa State and Colorado at 4-1. And then it's K-State, Texas Tech at 4-2. And then there are 3 3-2 teams, Cincinnati, Arizona, and West Virginia. 2 of them are playing each other, of course, this weekend in Cincinnati and West Virginia. But if you want to be in that upper echelon with 3 weeks to play, that BYU, Iowa State, Colorado, Kansas State, Texas Tech contingency, the loser of the Colorado-Texas Tech game is very much behind the 8 ball this week. That's indisputable. So this game, first off, you love it when the old Big 12 matchups come into the mix here, right? I do. I know if you're an old school Big 12 fan, you do as well. But this game to me is all about what Texas Tech is actually capable of doing at home on defense. Not on offense, but on defense. We saw a Texas Tech team over its 2-game losing streak to Baylor and TCU get smashed on that side of the ball. And then they come out last week and they looked really good in Ames, Iowa, a tough place to play, with an offense that was playing pretty darn well for most of the season. I mean, that was an Iowa State offense that, when you look at it in Big 12 play, is right there near the top. And Texas Tech, by their standards, completely shut them down. I mean, if you told me last week that the Iowa State offense was going to struggle like it did, I'd say, okay, well, maybe their defense does enough. But no, it was Texas Tech playing really well on both sides of the ball. Should have given Taj Brooks the ball more, but whatever. You got the win, you get out of there. You're a happy camper if you're Texas Tech. But now you got to play a Colorado offense that is the second best offense in the Big 12 when it comes to points per game. I mean, they put points on the board, and we know how they do it. With a great passing attack led by Shedeur Sanders. The offensive line is quietly getting better for Colorado, right? And then, of course, you got to figure out what to do with Travis Hunter. And Texas Tech, as much as I like what I saw last week from that side of the ball, They have the worst passing defense in the Big 12 based on yards per game. So that's what makes this a very difficult matchup for Texas Tech. And you have a Colorado defense that is steadily getting better. They get to the quarterback at a very good rate. I mean, people don't realize this. I mean, you might, because you're here and you watch this show, so you are a smart Big 12 fan. But not everybody probably knows that Colorado leads the Big 12 in sacks in Big 12 play, 18 sacks in 5 Big 12 games. And guess what? They played one less game than anybody who's within 4 sacks of them. K-State is 15, but they played 6 games. They're on a bye this week. So that defensive line has done a very good job. And on the other side, Texas Tech's offensive line has not been great. They are near the bottom of the Big 12 in sacks given up in 6 league games. So there's nothing about this matchup, quite frankly, I really like for Texas Tech outside of the fact that they're home, outside of the fact that they are, in Jones AT&T Stadium, big noon kickoff, the whole 9 yards. That'll be fun, but sometimes that can be a distraction as well. And Iowa State was due last week. That game did feel, that's why one of my picks was Texas Tech plus 13. They were due last week. So all in all, I'm going to roll with Colorado in this game. Now, I'm not giving you a pick against the spread. I will give you 3 picks against the spread at the end of the show. But this is the biggest game in the Big 12 this week by far, Colorado at Texas Tech. And there's just too many things where Colorado's strengths play into Texas Tech's weaknesses. And you do wonder if there's a hangover element coming off of that win up in Ames last week. I see some of you. I know you're rooting for Colorado to get upset by Tech. It's better for you if you're a K-State fan, in the case of Adam here on YouTube. But I don't see it, brother. I don't. We'll see if that home field does play a difference, though. Elsewhere around the Big 12, I mean, the second and third most important games in whatever order you want to stack them is BYU at Utah and Iowa State at Kansas. So Iowa State at Kansas is fascinating because I want to see how Iowa bounces back, if they can bounce back, or if Kansas coming off a bye week at home. Now it's at Arrowhead Stadium, so there might be a massive number of Iowa State fans there to, first off, watch a game at Arrowhead Stadium, home of the Chiefs, but also get a different experience in Kansas City. It's unique. It's once in a lifetime. College football at Arrowhead for your home team. That's pretty cool. So I expect a large number of Iowa State fans in attendance, even though they're coming off that loss. But to me, they're refocused. Here's the problem. Kansas is not a 2-6 team. You've heard me say it a million times if you're new to the show. If not, subscribe right now. And, hit that thumbs up on the video. And on the podcast, hit the 5-star. But Kansas has led 5 of their 6 games that they've lost in the fourth quarter. And the 6th game, they were up with 2 minutes left in the third quarter. That was the TCU game. So, this is a really, it sounds ridiculous to say, right? But this is a really good 2-6 team. And everybody knows that. And they've only been better over the last couple of weeks since Jalen Daniels has started to look like the guy that, frankly, we thought he could be all along. Right? That's what a lot of us expected him to be. And Kansas is well positioned to take advantage of the same weakness that UCF and Texas Tech took advantage of over the last couple of weeks. And that is a porous run defense. Iowa State's giving up 5.5 yards per carry. That's second worst in the Big 12. Only Oklahoma State's been worse in yards per carry given up. Meantime, Kansas is averaging 5.4 yards a carry. That is third in the Big 12 behind UCF and Baylor. So Kansas has an opportunity to take advantage of one of the biggest weaknesses that Iowa State has had all season long. So Kansas is not the team that if I'm Iowa State, I want to be playing right now. We always talk about which teams would you want to play in the front half of the season, which teams would you want to play in the back half of the season. Colorado's a team I wanted to play in the front half because they had all these transfers. They were trying to get these guys figured out, get them straightened out, right? On the other side, now with the season going on, I don't want to play Kansas because Jalen Daniels, after basically being away from football for 2 years, is finally remembering how explosive he is, remembering how to play at a very high level, and KU is going to be a tough out. We always knew it was going to be a tough out. I mean, the last time we saw them was 2 weeks ago. They're off a bye, and they were a bad fumble away from beating K-State. So, like, you cannot overlook this game if you're Iowa State, and KU is in position to potentially pull off this upset. Now, do I think they're ultimately going to do it? I don't. If Iowa State had lost or had won last week against Texas Tech, I might pick the upset this week. But that Iowa State team was so flat. They were dead. How do you think practice has been with Matt Campbell this week? Think those guys are maybe a little refocused? You think they stopped reading their mentions on social media from when they were in the bye week at 7-0, talking about how great they are and they're going to a college football playoff? My guess is they refocused in a very big way. And that is exactly what is going to show up on Saturday. And I think what you'll see is Rocco Beck have himself a very big afternoon against the Kansas defense, especially when it comes to the pass defense that has given up a ton of yardage. Now you're starting to see that secondary come around, but it still is hit or miss at times. So I think Iowa State pulls out a win. I'm not giving you a spread in this game. I'm not going to do it. But I do think they ultimately get it done. Elsewhere around the Big 12, I'm going to give you my picks at the end of the show. So let me talk about the games where I'm not giving you a pick. The other game where I don't have a pick is Oklahoma State at TCU. TCU is a 10.5-point favorite. I do believe TCU is going to win this game. Oklahoma State's a mess. Mike Gundy's talking about the fans being poor, the schools apologizing. What a disaster right now. I mean, it is a disaster of a season for Oklahoma State. There is no other way to spin it. This season has been a mess. It's been an embarrassment. It makes you wonder if Mike Gundy's bored. Like, they're not 3-3. They're 0-6 in Big 12 play. 0-6. He's like, I don't think I like the schemes. Bro, you're the head coach. Yeah, poor fans complain. Like, oh my gosh. And I know he apologized and everything else. And I'm a big Mike Gundy fan. But man, that was an all-time blunder from Mike Gundy. It was just so dumb. It made no sense. You got to know better. It's not about being soft. It's not about like being offended. It's just that there's one thing you don't do. You don't criticize your fans like that. Now, if someone's being a jackwag, and hey, that one fan who was heckling me, like James Franklin got into it with a fan after the Penn State loss to Ohio State. He walked up to him. He pointed at him. He had a few choice words. If James Franklin wants to call that guy a douche, fine, whatever. That's fine by me. But to paint that broad brush against fans the way Mike Gundy did, man, that's not what you want to be doing right now. It's not. And I say that as a Mike Gundy defender. Don't go down that road, brother. Don't do it. Ugh. So Oklahoma State's a mess. They lost to, of course, Arizona State last week. They had the big lightning delay in Stillwater. TCU is off a very hard-fought loss against Baylor. I mean, that was a huge game for both teams. Went down to the wire. Walk-off game-winning field goal for the Bears at home. The only thing I worry about for TCU in this game is whether or not there is kind of that hangover effect from a loss that big against your biggest rival. And I think that's fair to wonder. And the other thing is TCU doesn't run the ball very well, and that's the biggest weakness for Oklahoma State. I mean, they are the worst in the Big 12 by a mile in rushing yards allowed per game. So that does concern me. But here's the thing. Oklahoma State really hasn't been good doing anything on either side of the ball. So TCU's passing attack, which is the best in the Big 12, goes up against an Oklahoma State defense that is bottom 7 in the league in passing yards allowed per game. And when it comes to defensive efficiency, Oklahoma State is second to last, ahead of only West Virginia. So TCU should be able to win. I'm not picking anything when it comes to the spread here. It's 10.5. but I do believe TCU will win. I don't know where their heads are at coming off a hard-fought rivalry game, now walking into this game against an 0-6 team. That's sometimes where you can get caught off guard, and I don't know what to make of Mike Gundy in this team right now, so I'm staying away from that game. Now, the games I'm picking, let's talk about those. All right. Let's start with, I'm going to give you a lock, an underdog, and a bad bet. Let me start off. I'll start off here with my underdog. My underdog this week is West Virginia plus 4.5 at Cincinnati. Now, you might say that's nuts because Garrett Green is doubtful for the game, the West Virginia quarterback. I don't think it is. I don't. I look at this game and I say to myself, okay, well, I still like the West Virginia running attack against Cincinnati. Sign me up for that if you could, please. West Virginia is averaging almost 5 yards a carry. Their 208 yards per game on the ground is second in the Big 12. And you get to take on a Cincinnati team that has been mediocre at best against the running attack. And if they can establish the running game early, I know they're on the road, and this could end up being a nice rivalry, I will add, in the Big 12. I hope that it is. But if they can establish that running game early, they will be primed to put themselves in a position to try to win this game and slow it down. If Cincinnati's able to sling the ball around with Sorsby, they're going to win by 2 touchdowns. But if the Mountaineers can establish that run early, get control of the game, and then defensively, listen, the strength of the Cincinnati offense is that passing game. If they can get a lead and then just do enough to slow down that Cincinnati passing game, they can absolutely win this game, and they can most definitely cover the spread of 4.5. So I'm going with the Mountaineers in this game plus the 4.5 points. I like them in this spot. I'm looking at this team, and I'm also saying to myself, if Neil Brown needs a win, it's games like this. I mean, Neil Brown just does not win games he's not favored in at West Virginia. He wins the games he's typically favored in. He loses the games he's underdogs in. If he can pull off some of these games down the stretch, he's got to at least get himself to bowl eligibility, right, to keep his job in Morgantown into 2025. And if you can't win this game against Cincinnati, well, and it's not a knock on Cincinnati. It's just like these are the games that West Virginia has to start winning to show improvement as a program, because they have beaten mostly the worst teams in the Big 12. Kansas, Oklahoma State, and Arizona are their wins. Those are bad teams this year in the Big 12. And they've got Cincinnati, Baylor, UCF, and Texas Tech left. If they don't split those games, I don't see how Neil Brown keeps his job at 5-7 or 4-8. I just don't see it. So that's something to watch here in this one. And that's why I do like, one of the reasons I like the Mountaineers here in this game. And I'm just going to be watching it very closely to see how it all plays out. And then also I'm looking at it and I'm saying to myself, West Virginia, can they do a better job getting to the quarterback? We'll see. Cincinnati does not give up a lot of sacks. That's a testament to the offensive line and a testament to Sorsby himself. But that is something that is absolutely worth watching in this game as well. So I'm going West Virginia plus the 4.5 on Saturday. My bad bet. You ready for this? The bad bet of the week is Utah plus 3. That means I'm on BYU minus 3. The only reason this spread is plus 3 is because of the rivalry. And while this is my first holy war, I will readily admit, BYU is the far better team. And Utah is not used to being in a spot where it's trying to play spoiler. So even though Utah's home, there's really nothing about this Utah team I like better. If I picked Utah, it would simply be an emotional play and a feel. And I've done feel picks before. We all do them. But you would say to yourself, well, it's a rivalry game. They're home. They're going to want to ruin BYU's perfect season. Maybe all those things are true. But here's the thing. Utah stinks. They don't really do anything well. Like, the defense is solid, but it's not excellent. And it's not like they're losing these games by all that close of a margin. mean, the Arizona loss looks horrific in hindsight. Arizona State lost by 8. TCU lost by a couple of field goals. Houston game was close. But once again, as much as Houston is playing better, it's still a team that you have much more talent than, and you're losing to them. Both these teams are off a bye, so that should be a wash. And I don't think BYU is going to come off this bye week, pumping itself up like Iowa State did, because they've got a rival game on the road. It's not like they could spend 2 weeks reading their own press clippings and being like, wow, we got caught off guard. Like, you're playing your most hated rival coming out of that bye week. I don't sense them being lackadaisical or getting picked off here. Now, as for the game itself, some of the data. Offensive efficiency, BYU is absolutely outstanding on that front. They're in the top 4 in the Big 12. So I like them just as an offense. They don't do anything great, right? BYU, you don't sit there and say, oh, they're amazing at this. Like, Retzlaff has done the job. He's been good. Martin's been good. Like, they've got a solid offense, but it starts also on the ground. And that's where BYU is going to have to control this game on the road. They're averaging 5.1 yards a carry. That's 5th in the Big 12. And as much as, Utah has a very solid run defense, it's not what we thought it would be. It's basically middle of the pack. Utah's given up 4.5 yards per carry in Big 12 play. That is 9th in the Big 12. So they're right there, dead into the middle. BYU establishes that running attack, and that's how they can win this game. Utah doesn't run the ball well. They don't pass the ball well. They don't really do anything well on offense. They're 14th in the Big 12 in yards per game. They're 15th in the Big 12 in points per game. BYU is 1st in the Big 12 in points per game at 37. Utah's at 14. And it's a 3-point spread. Maybe it's a sucker bet, but call me a sucker, baby. I don't care. I am not going down with the ship on a Utah +3 pick here. That's just nuts. So I don't get it. Maybe Vegas knows something I don't, but I am not touching Utah +3, and I will go with BYU minus the points. Now for my lock of the week. You ready for this? Okay. My lock of the week is Arizona State minus 2.5 at home against UCF. UCF is getting way too much love for a really good game against an awful Arizona team that just played its worst game in 2 years. The PFF college ratings rated Arizona with its worst game since 2022. UCF did a nice job. They had a 56-12 win. They snapped a 5-game losing streak, but I don't know if they've got their quarterback. I hope for their sake they do. But was this a mirage? Was this beating up a really bad team during your space game that you always play well in at home? Or was it the start of something else? But I've got an Arizona State team that still is in Big 12 contention at home off a good win against Oklahoma State. And, you look at this season for the Arizona State Sun Devils, and they've got a tough loss at Texas Tech by a score. And then they lost at Cincinnati when they didn't have their quarterback a couple of weeks back. They're home, they're comfortable, and I think they can do a lot of damage in this game. First off, I'm looking at this game and I'm saying to myself, okay, UCF cannot get to the quarterback here. I mean, they don't do that well. Okay. I mean, just look at the numbers and you can see it for yourself. They do not do, excuse me. I've got this reversed. I've got my notes here on my phone. I read my notes backwards. So I apologize for that. UCF does do a good job getting to the quarterback, but Arizona State has only allowed 6 sacks in 5 games. So I think UCF's ability to get to the quarterback, which has been pretty good, will be in large part negated in this game. So that's the first part of it that I look at when it comes to why one of UCF's strengths can be negated by Arizona State at home. And then the other part of it is Arizona State, Cam Skattebo, getting that running game going with Sam Levitt in the backfield and taking advantage of a UCF run defense that is decent. It's decent, but nothing special. It's nothing I'm going to sit here and just go bonkers over. And by the way, one of the reasons it looks better when you look at the stat sheet than it really is because teams like to pass the ball against UCF. Their defensive efficiency is in the middle of the Big 12. They are giving up 281 passing yards per game, and that is third worst in the conference. So that's where they struggle the most, and that's where Arizona State may also have some opportunities if they can get Cam Skattebo going early at home. So my lock of the week is Arizona State -2.5 as they get set to take on UCF at home. My underdog, West Virginia, +4.5 at Cincinnati. And my bad bet, Utah, +3. And those of you asking, yes, we covered every game this week, just like many of you have been asking for. I gave you 3 picks against the spread, but in every other game, I told you who I thought was going to win outright. I just didn't give you a pick against the number. So thank you guys for being here as always. We appreciate that. I'm Pete Mundo. We're Heartland College Sports. If you are new or if you're back, subscribe. Just check. Make sure you're subscribed and hit the thumbs up on the video and the 5-star rating and review on the podcast. Thank you guys. Join us on the Heartland College Sports forums on the website. Those are free as always. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great night. Enjoy the games. I'm back here Sunday for a reaction show. So that'll drop on Sunday. All right. So you want to make sure you're back here then. Subscribe. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.